All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Another one of my interviews. With me today is Dave Herrera. He's running for council, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But my intro, of course, as always, I've always said that politics are local, and the best way, to be able to improve not only our community, our state, but our country is to start on a local level. Dave, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your patience. I don't know why the mic went out.
It's all right.
But we got it. We got it back. So Dave, what's that?
No, I said absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, I think it's important because I got a chance to meet you firsthand in Orlando. But one of the things, like I said, not only bringing on candidates because because they're the most passionate about ideas and solution, but I also like for people around the country to see who's getting involved in our communities, who's, it's the everyday people. And I'm bringing you on right now. You're an everyday person, which we're going to get to know in a minute. I mean, later on, I've got a guy named Brandon who's running for Congress in Missouri, and he's a truck driver. So it's the everyday people like him, you, me, that I think are the ones that are going to make the biggest difference in our communities. So where are you? Where are you located and where are you running for council?
So I live in central New Jersey. I'm running for town council in East Brunswick, which is one of the largest cities in Middlesex County, New Jersey. It's a town, but it should be a city. We have almost 50,000 residents. So, got involved last year, ran a campaign in a very blue district, came about 270 votes short, which was almost unheard of because the person who ran the year before me lost by almost 4,000 votes. So to come so close, it was just something that I felt we have to continue. We've come so far,
yeah,
so close, and I don't consider, even though the election maybe didn't go the way we expected, I don't consider anything that we did during that campaign a loss. And I said, let's just keep going. We have momentum, we have name recognition, we have passion and ideas that people really were opening up to. So why stop?
So it's for the same position.
Yes, sir. So
okay.
I ran last year in a special election. I guess somebody,
okay.
moved up in the world and, the seat became available. So I ran a special election. But this year, now there's 4 seats available. So, just law of averages here. We're like, all right, we came real close last time. There's 4 seats open. We're going to do our best to get one this year. And I think we will.
When you say there's 4 seats open, so you don't run for a specific seat, you run and they take the top 4 people, I guess.
Right. So last year I ran for somebody's specific seat. This year, so there's 5 councilmen in my town. I ran against one of them last year, and now the other 4 are basically up for election now. So we've got a really good shot here, and I think it's about time we started injecting some new life, some new ideas, and obviously a different party in there. We've had a one-party rule in my town. There hasn't been a Republican on the council in almost 6 years. Hasn't been an elected Republican mayor since 1992. Long before I got involved in politics, as you could probably imagine.
Yeah.
I just think it's time for some change, and I think the people spoke last election in such a number. I mean, if you really think about it, the election prior was a 65-35% voter margin split. To this past election, it's 51-49. That's tremendous.
So share with me this: when there's 4 guys that are running, 4 guys that are running for re-election. There's you, number 5. How many other ones are there running for this position?
So obviously,
for these 4 seats, rather.
Right, 4 seats. So we're running against an entire Democrat slate. All 4 councils are Democrats, and myself, and 3 other Republicans will be running against.
So I guess, are you using a tagline? Give a Republican a break. I mean, I'm joking because it sounds to me like if things aren't going well in your community and it's in Democrat control, it's almost like say, hey guys, look, it won't hurt to have one Republican on there. So
right.
Of course, I'm saying that kind of,
But that's basically what we said all last election was, all these issues that are going on in town, whether it was roads or redevelopment or businesses closing or lack of businesses opening. I said, you can't point the finger at anybody in my party. So as much as you may not like the Republican Party, you can't blame us for
Right.
anything. It's a, it was kind of more along the lines of like, what do you got to lose?
There used to be a marketing program, and I forget what the product was. It was a long time ago, and I hate to admit this because it's probably before you were born. But there was a marketing program for a product that the tagline was "Don't hate me because I'm beautiful."
Mm-hmm.
And you could always say, don't hate me because I'm Republican. Love me
Right.
for my ideas.
Right.
And what's that?
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, I mean, tell people, hey, look, don't not vote because I'm Republican in a different district. Look at my ideas, and what I just did an interview on this here a few right before you, and I talk about this all the time. Is that conservative values know no party, and when you talk about
Well,
things like what's that?
no, I was going to say that's precisely what we ran on. Like you asked
Yeah,
if we had a tagline, and last year it was literally something as simple as it was people over politics, people over party. It was
right.
about understanding that especially in local elections, and I think this is what people don't understand is the things that people disagree with, whether they're Democrat or Republican, are mostly on federal level. They're things that they don't agree with, from the president to Congress to governors. But when you're talking about your local, like township level stuff, it really shouldn't be partisan. There's towns that surround the area that are nonpartisan county seats. So it's not a Democrat or Republican running, it's just a person running for that seat. And I think that would be what's best, because when I talk about, coming up 200 votes short of an election, I know for a fact that I didn't lose to a candidate because the guy I ran against had no idea what he was doing. That he was basically a body that the Democrat National Committee put up, and they were like, run here. We're going to give you, a post-it notes, and we're going to give you,
Yeah.
your speeches, and we're going to put you out. Like I went to a debate with this guy, and I showed up literally with a bottle of water and a Red Bull. That he showed up with a binder that had printed responses and taglines on it, so he knew exactly what to say. Like read it top to bottom. It was a plan. So I didn't lose to a candidate. I lost to a party, and I really, I have the question to say is if this wasn't a party affiliated election, if it was just me versus this guy, and let's talk about our ideas.
Right.
Who do you think won? And the reality is that the R in front of my name did hurt me, but doesn't discourage me from continuing to try, because I believe the message has to be about people over party.
I love this, and it's finding things that you can unite on in your community, and the three top ones for me are faith, family, and fiscal responsibility. And
Right.
and if you're able to show, basically for starters that this council has not been responsible, it would help your community to have a different party in there for not only diversity's sake, but for have someone that's an oversight, if you will. It's almost like having co-equal branches of government looking out
Right.
against each other.
100%. And that's kind of what I said, because I started going to these council meetings, which, by the way, if anybody's ever been to a council meeting, they know they're boring. Because
right.
the first time I went, I don't know what I expected it to be, but it wasn't what I received. I figured a town with almost 50,000 people, if they were talking about a major issue or some sort of redevelopment project, that you would see, a room full of people packed, no seats. And I walked in there and I brought, my campaign manager and like one or two other people from my team. And there was 3 other people in this whole room. And I said, wow, had we not shown up, it'd been a room with 3 people in it.
Right.
And it's just no one pays attention. And then when you start listening to these ordinances and these motions that they make, there's really not much discussion. It's kind of like,
Right.
can I get a second on the floor? Someone seconds it, and then it's yes votes down the line. So yeah, I was saying, wouldn't you want somebody in there to say, hey, what's going on? What are you doing
Let's
with
stop
this?
here for a second and look the other way.
Right. And you know what? It's kind of become, I made this joke. I actually did a podcast last week, and we're actually in the middle of fighting this architect renderings for a hockey rink, right? They want to build a hockey rink here in my town, which, listen, I grew up playing travel hockey. I think it'll be amazing. But I saw the proposal, and it was almost $600,000 just for the architectural renderings for the hockey rink.
Where's our tax dollars?
I asked the question. I said, I think I'm in the wrong business if I can make $600,000 to sketch up an ice rink,
Right.
And I raised the question,
Here's
but
a circle where the ice goes, and here's some seats, $600,000.
So they ended up tabling it. We raised some questions and they tabled the issue, and then they actually didn't even put it on the next agenda. So we're waiting for them to bring it back. But I said, I'm kind of like I've become like the Batman of East Brunswick. Like I've become like this political vigilante where I show up and I just kind of like, bring this storm cloud over their council where they're just used to, you get this, you get that, and they spend
You
money
get a dollar, you get a ice rink, you get a bridge of nowhere, right?
So we start asking the questions, and that's pretty much how the campaign is already shaping up to be. Obviously, we still have to go through, the legal standpoints and be voted on. But obviously, I know I'm going to be running, and it's just hitting the ground running. And the thing I want to do differently than last campaign was just to get people to know me because, in a town we have 14,000 or 15,000 Democrat voters and only 7,500 Republicans. Like we're heavily outnumbered. So I had to get as much information as possible. Now people know who I am, whether they like it or not. They know who I am, and now it's just about showing, okay, this is the team you guys have had in place forever. This is what I'm going to do when I get on the council. This is what I'm going to get done for you, whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican.
I love it because if you can of course, obviously you made that message before, and if you can hammer that message home now that, that even though you're a Republican, you're coming in there to do things for everybody because
Right.
Look, that's the good thing about when you're running on a community level, you can show people that you got to live in that community for one, but two, the things that you do make the community better for you to live in also. So it's not like you want to do these Republican things that are going to, take away their rights as Democrats.
We're not talking about anything crazy. And I think that's what people say. On a local level, you're not talking about the big issues, right? You're not talking about guns. You're not talking about border security. You're not talking about people's rights. You're talking about such basic everyday life stuff.
Are we going to spend $5 million on a hockey rink? Are we going to spend, our parking tickets and whatnot? How big of an area is your where you're running?
So again, we have 50,000 residents. I think it's like I know it's a pretty big town. I don't know I don't want to because I know there's people in my town on the other.
In the last census, look, Louisiana legislators about a month or two ago argue whether we had 6 million residents in Louisiana or we only had 4.5 million. That's a 1.5 million swing, and I watched very smart people argue over that. So, whether it's 50,000, 60 or 40, it's a big town.
Right. It's about 50,000 people. So there's a lot. I've been here for 21 years. I went to, grade school here, graduated high school, got my first job, so on and so forth. So this is a community. I moved originally. I'm from Queens, New York. So me and my mom, we lived out in Queens after 9/11. My mom worked in Manhattan. After that happened, she said, I'm not going to work here in the city anymore. So she said, it's time to move. And, we drove into East Brunswick. And I remember at the time, seeing all these farmlands and seeing, there was cows and, kids outside, because when you live in Queens, you're not allowed to go outside and play.
Right.
It's just not a thing you do. And, I grew up across the street from a train station. So to be in a place that had fields and kids riding bicycles, I just remember, falling in love with it immediately. And I'm still in love with the town today. I just have seen changes that I'm not happy with. And basically the way I've equated the way this administration, if you can call it that, is running our town. I grew up from an Italian family, right? So when an Italian grandma makes pasta, there's the old saying, they throw it at the wall. If it sticks, it's done. And that kind of seems like the approach that these local officials are taking. They just grab ideas out of a hat, throw it at the wall. If it sticks, great. They look like
great analogy, Dave.
But that's what it feels like. It's like, is there really a plan, or are we selling out our town to the highest bidder? Right. And you know what? It's funny because a lot of my friends, like you were mentioning before we went live, my buddy Billy, who's running for Congress. And, while I think it's amazing what he's doing, a lot of people focus on those congressional races, those Senate races, the gubernatorial race. But our local level politics, not only one, do they have more day-to-day control over how you live your life in town, but they go so
Right.
under the radar that I honestly believe that the local level corruption might be more than the Capitol Hill corruption because no one's paying attention.
That's a real interesting point, because I've always talked about when these people have control over our money, where is it easier to hide? I mean, in DC, we know what's going on with our money, or so to speak, because we watch it on TV. But but we can't do anything about it.
Right.
You've
never seen Tucker Carlson calling out a local mayor for fiscal irresponsibility. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, but on a local level, if there's corruption, you can show up at a council meeting, that's a public council meeting, and say, you're stealing from us, or you're doing this, and you can point it out. You can call the local news, and they're going to come out because they need a story. And
right.
That's the good thing about running.
We invite everybody that we can. I mean, I've gained a pretty substantial social media following, not just from the campaign, but in general.
Right.
And the one benefit of being, I just turned 31 a few months ago, so I'm a younger guy. I grew up in that technology era, so it's so much easier if you think about it. Like, go back to what I said: 3 people show up to a council meeting, right? How many people maybe watch it on television? Who watches that? Nobody. Exactly. So if I can take highlights of what happened, or what I think East Brunswick should know, shoot a quick video, put it on Facebook, put a, $50 to $100 ad boost behind it, target it to East Brunswick residents, because everybody has Facebook nowadays.
Right, exactly, right.
That message, right? So I posted the hockey rink. I did the hockey rink. My response to them, right? I called all these hockey rinks in the state. I found out how much they cost to build, how much they paid for architects, how much it cost to run it. And I showed up there with more facts than these elected officials had. And I recorded it, obviously, put it on Facebook. And it's got, right now it's been up for like 3 days, almost over 3,000 views locally.
Oh, man, unbelievable. That's awesome.
They don't get that kind of view on their council. So if they're going to do the wrong things, they have to understand now that somebody actually called me the watchdog, and I was like, and I kind of like that, because, who is paying attention? Because I know before I decided to get involved, I wasn't paying attention to what's going on locally.
Well, so I'm going to kind of deviate a little bit here from where we're going with this, because I'm going to get back to this, because we laid the groundwork about your passion, but I want to get to know more about who you are. We know you're from Queens, you moved to East Brunswick, and I want to know more about, before you started your business, about your business, and give people a little bit of knowledge about you in a little bit more detail, but also about your business acumen, because I think that's important. And then I want to use that to magnify your passions, your ideas for East Brunswick, and how you're going to be able to use all of that experience to help people. So so I get college or straight to business?
So I did about, I think, a semester of community college, and I remember getting my first bill in the mail for the first semester, and I looked at it, and I remember exactly to this day, I said, man, I didn't like it when it was free. Now I got to pay for it. And for me, I just I can't sit at a desk. I have never been able to have a desk job. Like, for me, it just wasn't something that I was interested in. So I went right to the workforce. I bounced around for a long time. I'd always have different jobs. I've done everything from, working at selling cars, to selling electronics, to working on cars, to you name it, I've done it. Working as a bartender, a waiter, you name it, all that stuff.
So you have life experience, basically.
Life experience. And then, along my journey, I suffered with addiction issues, with drugs and alcohol. And, it got really bad in my life. And, about 4.5 years ago, I just celebrated 4.5 years clean, but 4.5 years ago,
congratulations.
Thank you very much. 4.5 years ago, or 5 years ago, and I like to say this along the campaign trail, but, 5 years ago, I was sleeping in my car in East Brunswick because, my family was done with me. My friends were done with me. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a bank account. I was driving this old 97 3 Series BMW that started with a screwdriver. And how the life I was living. And,
I never would have guessed this.
We'll tie into that. But I was at my wit's end. I had nowhere to go. And I'm not a super religious person, but I am spiritual. I do believe in God. I asked him one day, I was like, and maybe this is too much to say, but I was either like, help me or let me die, because I can't go on living this way. I can't go on living this way anymore. And the next morning I woke up and I looked in the mirror and I couldn't recognize myself anymore. And I said, today's the day. Today's the day we're going to make a change, because I don't like who I see, right? It was me, but I didn't recognize the person I had become, the things that I was doing, everything, all my
on a spiritual level, that was probably somebody working inside of you.
100%. 100%. That is the God of my understanding. I know that today. And I turned my life around. I got clean. And in the last 5 years, I started, from got the job of humility, right? I was a day laborer on a construction site, shoveling dirt and picking up trash for $80 a day, until I got my bearings. And then I started working at this restaurant right here behind me, El Toro Loco, as a bartender. And then I'm one of those people, right, that maybe it's the addict personality, but I'm an all or nothing kind of person. If I'm going to do something, I do it 110%. And, I threw myself into this place because I really loved the vibe. I loved the food, and I became the bar manager. And then, one day I was messing around in the kitchen and I spoke to one of the owners here and I said, your menu, it could use some help. I used to cook a lot. Like, I can help you. And I became the kitchen manager, and I revitalized the menu here. And, we changed the cocktail program, the food menu. I became the assistant general manager to the general manager. And then before they knew it, they couldn't recognize this place anymore because all the employees were mine. All the menu items were mine. I had basically rebranded this place in my own image here. And they sat me down and they said, we appreciate all the work you've done. We're going to make you a partner in this business. And they gave me a percentage of this business.
Oh, wow.
No money out of my pocket. It was it's called what's called a sweat equity partnership. They said, we appreciate the work you do. And, you're a partner now. You're an owner of this business. And we managed it through COVID. We actually made it profitable because we adapted. And, through all the hoops we had to jump through. I think you said you're in Louisiana. So it definitely wasn't the same as it was up here in New Jersey with Phil Murphy. It was crazy. But we managed, through all the hoops, the regulations, the capacity limits, the shutdowns, the price increases, the supply chain issues, the fact that employees didn't want to come to work because they were making $1,000 a week on unemployment. We jumped through all these hoops. We made it to the other side. And then, obviously, the 2020 election and everything going on. And it had been such this, like, even before the 2020 election, you just felt this energy from both sides of the aisle where people were just, there's no such thing as a conversation anymore. You were either with us or you were against us kind of mentality.
Right. Yeah. I don't like that. Right.
And I got so sick of it because I consider myself, all things aside, a very common sense kind of person where I'm willing to, I don't know if you believe in the zodiac, but, I'm a Libra and our life is all about balance. And I always believe in weighing both sides of the coin before I make a decision. And then, I decided, listen, I used to go to these rallies in locally and hold up signs and, chant and do all this other stuff. And I said, well, what are we actually doing? What are we actually doing here?
Making some noise, right?
Yeah, make some noise. But the reality is, if you want to affect change, you actually have to be willing to do some work. So I contacted the town clerk. I said, you get me in touch with whoever's in charge of the Republican Party. He called me. I said, I want to run for office. What do you have? And she's like, I have town council. I was like, yeah, I'll take that. She's like, have you ever run before? I said, no, but get me in front of somebody and let them know. And, they interviewed five candidates, and I ultimately became the one candidate they chose. And over the past year, I've kind of, in the most, humble way I can say this, because I am grateful for the opportunity, I've kind of become this face, not only in East Brunswick, but in Middlesex, New Jersey, and in the state of, like, this local guy that's just showing up and, knocking on these doors of these career establishment politicians and actually representing the people. And at the end of the day, I know some of my Republican followers won't like this, but I'm here to work for everybody. Exactly. I don't care what letter they present.
Thank you. That's I love that. what's interesting, I didn't mean to sound so exuberant and interrupt you, but
Oh,
but that's exactly one of the things I like about you is that you're trying to work for people. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, I may be Republican, I might be ideological on the right, but
right.
I'm also a freedom liberty guy, and I have conservative values, and I believe that conservative values cross all party lines. And
Absolutely.
and it's not, and when it's really not even ideologies that divide us as much as it is narratives.
Right.
And when we can, as people, find things that bring us together, unite us a little bit more, and we talk about things that we have in common, we talk about things that unite us, we talk about ideas and solutions, we find not only how much we have in common, but
Well,
we find out,
that was
huh?
kind of the campaign strategy, right? So I would go around, I would talk to people, I would just say, "Hey, I'm Dave. I've been here for 21 years. I'm running
Dave.
for council.
Yeah.
Can I talk to you for a few minutes?" And they'd be like, "Sure." And I did something that I don't think any politician. So if they're listening and you want to take a page out of my book, on the Democrat side, go ahead, because I honestly believe this is how we should be treating people.
Right.
I don't care who it is. We just need a better class of politician. But what I would do is I would say, I'd ask him, I'd say, "Hey, Will, how long have you been here in town?" And, you would respond with however long it had been. I'm like, "Wow, man, long time, me too." And I'd say, "Will, I got a question for you. If you were in charge of East Brunswick tomorrow, what would be something you'd like to see done?" And everybody did the same thing. They'd go like this. And the reality is because nobody had ever asked them that question. Because
Yeah,
nobody,
that's a great idea.
and then when people would say, they'd go, "Well, I'd love to see more businesses here in town. Or I'd love to see the roads better. I'd love to see this. I'd love to see that." And I'd let them answer the question. And I'd say, "Hey, Will, can I show you something real quick?" And I'd flip over my palm card and I'd be like, "You just listed everything I'm running on. So is it safe to say me and you are on the same page here about what we want to see in our town?" And I would talk to them for 10, 15 minutes. I'd be like, "Will, the one question I didn't ask you?" And he'd be like, "What?" I say, "What party you are?" And he goes, "Yeah, you're right, you didn't." I said, "Because it's not important. What's important is that we start doing what's best for the town and
Right.
stop. I vote party line because that's what I was told to do. And you vote for a guy you have no idea who he is."
Exactly. No, I love this. So I don't know if I told you this or not at CPAC, but we have a similar story. I ran for the legislature here in Louisiana, in my area, and I actually have told this story before. I would tell it again, but I mean, I have in my district. I thought everybody looked like me. I mean, it's mostly church-going people. It's
Right.
I church-going people. You got like 4 major churches in the area. You've got of all faiths. You've got I thought everybody's conservative. Everybody's family. It's very homogenous. I thought everybody's gonna look like me. And then and I used to be, by the way, 8 years ago when I started my radio show, I wanted to be the next right-wing conservative talk show host. And so I was repeating that Republican narrative all the time. Well, when I ran for office, I knocked on every door in the district. I'm going to repeat, I knocked on every door in the district. Exactly. And people don't realize, like it's amazing is I have a little reputation at the legislature. When I first started getting more involved after the election, people said, "Oh, you're the guy that knocked on every door." And I
Yep.
went, "Yeah, I did." So the point is, when I started knocking on every door, my only similar story to that is just by talking to people, I found out how much we have in common because,
Right.
someone might answer the door that doesn't look like me. Now,
Yeah.
and I like, "You live here?" I mean, of course, I'm not saying that, but, I start meeting people that are not like what you would expect my community to be like.
My town is probably the exact opposite. We're such a melting pot.
Yeah.
You can knock on one door and I can see a guy that looks like you. I go to the next door and it'd be a Chinese family. The door next door would be an Indian family. Then you would talk to Jewish people, Catholic people, Muslim people. You know what I mean? My town is so diverse, and I think that's really amazing because you really have to be a special individual to represent such a diverse group because
Right.
there isn't a one size fits all approach that you can do here.
Exactly right.
When people would see me and in the summertime, like I'll show up for the camera, but I'm all tatted up. Like
We the people. I love it.
And we the people, like,
I
I'm
love
all
it.
tattoos, and people be like, I don't like the Republican Party. And I'm like, what about me screams Republican Party? Other than the
Yeah.
fact I'm a fiscal conservative and I like our Constitution. Like I grew up here in town with you guys. Like we're not that bad. And but again, there was people who were running my party. They were like, no, you got to just knock on the Republican door. And I'm like, why? We're missing out on opportunities to.
Exactly.
Look, my town. I don't know how big your district is, but again, 50,000 people. I think there's something like 20,000 homes or 17,000 homes in East Brunswick. I hit personally 7,500 doors by myself. So if you think I wasn't busy, I spent my summer as a 30-year-old guy in a post-COVID world where I could have been, going to the beach or doing whatever. I spent my summer walking around East Brunswick talking about issues because I actually genuinely care.
I'm actually doing the math right now. I want to say there was in each district. No, that's wrong. In each district, there's how many people are in my district? Because you had asked a minute ago. It's like I'm gonna get it wrong, but it's around somewhere between 50 and 60,000 people.
Wow.
In my legislative district that I was running in.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot of people, and I mean, I spent 8 months. And I spent usually about 10 hours a day, 8 to 10 hours a day, knocking on doors.
That's the goal. So we figured. So since last year, I did 7,500 homes, and we have it all like basically in a folder of where we went. Now I've got 3 other candidates running with me. We'll get their volunteers as well. There's 10,000 homes left. My goal is to make sure that we get to every single one of those homes again. And we can go and turn around and say, hey, over the last 2 election cycles, I've knocked on every door in East Brunswick. I've spoken to everyone, whether they slammed the door on me or they hugged me and said, we're voting for you. I spoke to every single resident.
But you're telling a story that I really like that I can share with you, which is, people were telling me my campaign people were all like, you're spending too much time at the door. You shouldn't be knocking on Republican doors. Only show up on, only knock on doors where they're going to vote. And I said, no, I'm knocking on every single door. If I'm walking down the street, I'm knocking on every door. I'm doing this from, I started sometimes at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, I didn't knock on doors at 8 o'clock in the morning. What I did was I'd walk to the street and catch people that were leaving for work. And then if they're outside, I'd stop and talk to them. And then around 10 o'clock, that's when I started knocking. And, but I found a lot of people that were Democrats that, I had the door slammed in my face. And, now I wouldn't mean to give them the puppy dog look, but it's amazing how many times people would slam the door in my face and I'd turn around and I got to tell you, almost all of them open the door. Hey, we're sorry. And then we start talking and they're like, we knew you were a Republican. We did, and we start talking. And before I knew it, so many of them said, I'm going to vote for you. Yeah. After just finding what you have in common. And that's what it's all about.
I really think the door knocking is such an underrated tool. Number one, right? Since you ran a campaign, campaigns are expensive.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So they want you to raise funds. They want you to raise funds. Blah 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 blah. The reality is that door knocking is the only thing that's free. It doesn't cost you any money to walk around and knock on doors. And also, again, like you said, you're going to meet people, number one, that might have been Democrat that will turn around and be like, you know what? I'm going to vote for you just because, I like what you're saying. Also, in my town, right, I was talking to people that go, you know what? I've lived here 20, 30, whatever years they had lived here. You're the first person to ever knock on my door.
I heard that a whole lot myself.
Right? And they'll be like, I'm an independent voter or I'm this or I'm that. And they go, you know what? Just because you're here, I'm voting for you. So again, you're going to get votes just off people who have been like, oh my God, like someone actually cares enough to represent, and you'll get those votes. So, we have a game plan. I know when we first met, you read my name tag and you were like, what's this grand new party? Like, I love this. And we talked about it.
Right.
And, I think we're going to have to bring the grand new party down to Louisiana because it's an infectious philosophy, right? Yeah. I've had to explain this so many times because people up here, especially, the opposition will tell you that, I'm anti-GOP or that I'm trying to start a third party. And that's farthest from the truth. The reality is I am starting a philosophy of saying, you know what? Like we said, I'm a drug addict in recovery. I'm a business owner. I'm covered in tattoos. I'm not your typical politician, which is my Instagram, but I'm just a person that wants to represent. I am the people. And we're showing that, you know what, the time has come for these like people who have been bred since birth to one day have power of saying, you know what, I don't need power. I don't need money. I don't need the people that want to take photos with me. Like, it's cool, don't get me wrong, but I don't need that. What I
Yeah,
need is for people to feel that sense of freedom again, for people to feel like they have control, because that's what the whole point of America was, is for people to feel that freedom. And if
exactly.
anybody, no matter where they are in the United States, people feel like their
Right.
freedom are not the same anymore.
They're not. They're not.
No.
I just learned today, and I did some shows. I did some interviews in Baton Rouge at the legislature, talking about not freedom, and I'm kind of breaking it now, but it's going to be on the video too that it did earlier. That now there's something being done where if we if oh goodness, if it's determined that we disagree with the government, or that we in something that they don't agree with, like for instance, if they think we're conspiracy theorists because we don't agree with the government, we can be put on the watch list. Do you know about this?
You want to know what I heard that, and I think it's crazy, but you want to know something, you can tell this to people. You want to know what the difference between the truth and a conspiracy theory is?
What?
About 6 months. Just hold the line. Just hold the line, because everything that you've said, and I'm sure you're probably one of those people like me, everything I've said over the last 2 years has come out to be true. And all you got to do is hold that line. Like, you're crazy. That'll never happen. They'll never do that. And what happened? Think about it. We said masks didn't work, right? I'm not an anti-masker by any means, but people
I am not anti-vax. Yeah.
right. And now they're coming out and they're saying, oh, what they didn't. And we said, you know, COVID came from China, and we find out that it did come from China. You know, look, more recently, right? The Hunter Biden laptop. That's a real thing now, all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's not true. It's all conspiracy thinking.
Yeah, I watched a clip of it was like 10 minutes worth of mainstream media coverage where they were trying to call it Russian disinformation, and now it's real.
Yep.
So
and that's real.
If you have a feeling in your gut that something is right, and this is what I tell people, whether or not they agree with me, and that's kind of the purpose of me being in this kind of, I guess, spotlight of talking about things, is whether or not you'll ever agree with me is irrelevant. All I want you to do is become a free thinker and to think for yourself and question everything. You know, like when I come across an article, depending on whatever it is, I like to read a conservative journalist, I like to read a liberal journalist, and I like to read an independent journalist, and I formulate my own opinion based on the three sides.
I love it. Try in the military, you say triangulating.
Right, absolutely. Because you can sit there and say, I get all my news, you know, like I have friends, I get all my news, and where'd you get it from? Well, I got it from CNN. And I have other friends who are like, I got my news. I'm like, where'd you get it from? They're like, oh, Fox News. And I'm like, you got to differentiate where you're getting your information from.
Exactly right. I agree 100%, because if you only listen to one side, that's part of the argument that when people start listening to the narratives and they become ingrained with those, or those narratives become ingrained in their system, you know, they're not listening to all sides. And sometimes it's interesting is that, like in the legislature, you know, I'm known as not, people know what side of the fence I'm on, but I'll bring on Democrats on my show and I'll let them talk. You know, and I'll just be not as passionate about their ideas. Like, you know, obviously when you say something I agree with, you see me light up, you know, but I'll let them have their say. I'll let them talk about their ideas, because while I might not agree with them, they're representing a community that does agree with them. And when you let them talk about their ideas and you let the other side talk about their ideas, and if you listen to each other, you find, and you take out just the things that you have in common, our communities benefit. We have smaller legislation going through Congress, and it's not as all, and you don't get wrapped up in all the narratives.
And that needs to happen more, right? And there's a famous saying, I don't want to butcher who said it, but it's basically like, when Democrats and Republicans are unhappy about what they voted on, right? If both sides are unhappy, then the people have won, right? Because that's what it needs to be, because that means both sides have made a compromise that will benefit the people, right? So they're like, okay, you know what? I'll take a concession on this if we can get this done. And the other side will be like, okay. And neither of them are really happy, but that means the best possible outcome happened for the people.
Exactly right.
Rule. Look, as a Republican, I would not want to see one party rule of fully Republicans. You need to have checks and balances.
No. So is that the kind of sentiment that you're going to bring to the council?
Absolutely.
Once you're elected, are you going to stick to that on the council and work with the other council members based on those thoughts?
Look, I've said this and I stay true to this, and this is who I am, right? I'm a logical thinker. There are ideas, and I'll be the first one to say this again. Maybe people in my party won't agree with this. There are ideas that I believe the Democrat Party has hit the nail on and they do well with. And there's obviously, I agree more so with the Republican side of things, and I think they've hit the nail. But let's be realistic. Both parties have missed the mark time and time again. So
Absolutely.
I'm not going to say if, when I'm on the council, there will be issues that I don't agree with that I'm going to raise the question and ask. But there's going to be, I'm sure, because I've sat in these meetings and they've put up ordinances and I've sat there and I've gone, okay, I like that. So I'm not going to be up there to be just like that big bad Republican guy that disagrees with everything they say.
Right.
If it's a good bill,
no.
if it's a good bill, I'll vote on it. But if I think it's fiscally irresponsible or I think it's garbage and full of fluff, I'm going to be the first one to say it.
I love this. Matter of fact, like I said, that's the best way to be on there. Look,
Yeah.
I always tell people I'm more of a libertarian-minded Republican. Not
conservative, social liberal.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not so far right that I can't see the good ideas that that Democrats have. And
Right,
and I have and one of my favorite taglines is this: I've got Democrat friends who are more Republican conservative than some of my Republican conservative friends are.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And I've got some Republican friends that are more like Democrats.
I tell people I said everybody is conservative about something and everybody is liberal about something. It just depends on what
you put it. That's a great way to put
it. We don't have to agree on it, but everybody is conservative about something, and then there's
you got a little distort there.
I was just going to say that everybody has an issue that they are conservative and they will not move off of. And there's issues like me, again, as an addict in recovery, like as far as like marijuana goes, like I don't smoke anymore, but I could care less if people want to smoke. Go smoke. Right. If it makes you happy, then do it.
Now that's an interesting coming from a recovering addict, on that one. You would think that you're against it.
It doesn't bother me. My biggest issue with that is I feel kind of like, is nobody paying attention that, the government locked people up for decades for weed and now they're making profits on it? Like nobody else is finding this funny.
Well, what's interesting is if you look at the history of it, and I'm going to get some of this wrong, but the gist of it is correct, is that when hemp was outlawed, it was outlawed and when logging was a huge industry. And hemp wasn't just being smoked. I mean, hemp was being used for rope.
Oh, bunch of stuff.
It grows faster. It grows faster and it's cheaper to produce or grow rather than trees. And so the logging industry got it all outlawed and banned. Of course, there's a lot more. I'm sure there's a lot of other ideas there.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing that could be said for like me. Like I vape, right? Because I wanted to get off cigarettes. And you know what? What happened? The big tobacco companies realized they were losing billions of dollars a year. And all of a sudden they got out on their phone and they called their buddies and said, hey, you want money next campaign? You better fix this. And now in New Jersey, you can't even buy flavored vape juice anymore. It's like it's crazy because they're like, oh, it's too enticing to little kids. And I'm like, but you still have like cotton candy flavored vodka on the shelves. So, make up your mind. Like you can't.
Oh man, that was making me turn red.
Yeah.
So let's focus more on some things that I got some issues that I want to talk to you about that because again, look, I handpick my interviews, exactly like you and Billy were two of the people I love talking to. The person I just had on a minute ago, Jean Nigro, she's got that spiritual side. I have a strong spiritual side, and I love interviewing people like that. She's very, very, very conservative, and so there's a lot of different uniqueness that each of you have. but I enjoy talking with you, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the show. But I also think that it's important, because this is like my mission. Like, even though I have it's a radio show. Even though I ran for office and wanted to be involved in politics as an elected official, I feel that this is my calling, and I'm trying to find things to help fix not only communities but our country. And so I don't just bring on elected officials, and I don't just talk about the narratives. I don't talk about narratives that much on my show. I love bringing on people that that have either similar, well, all kinds of people actually, really, but I love bringing on people that are similar more, because I feel that when you have just basic discussions, people get to see not only or hear good ideas and unique ideas, but they get to meet people that are making a difference that they can either emulate or get ideas from, or in the case of candidates, that I can help promote a little bit in such a way that, the people in your community can get to know you. And because this interview is going to be on a podcast, and anybody can listen to it, I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about some of the issues so your community can see it and other communities might benefit from it. Like, the ideas that you have for some of this in your community might be things that other communities can benefit from. You've got something on your website about redevelopment. Can you talk about that?
So the redevelopment has been sitting stagnant for about 6 years. It was old, mixed use, right? So there was commercial properties. There were properties there that have been sitting for 5-6 years, and they haven't been utilized. And basically, East Brunswick condemned these properties so they could use them, right? So they went through condemnation. They condemned these properties. They basically are forcing the tenants out so they could do their dream redevelopment. And basically, the people who own it were like, "See you in court," and they haven't moved. I think they use this word redevelopment. It's not just in East Brunswick, but it's all over the place. And what I think redevelopment ends up being overdevelopment. It becomes urbanization. It becomes deforestation. It becomes all of these things that, nobody ever expected them to be. And I just wanted to have common sense redevelopment. One of my biggest issues with the redevelopment in East Brunswick was that it was a pilot funded program. I don't know if you're familiar with pilot or any of your viewers. Pilot basically stands for payment in lieu of taxes. So
no, absolutely right.
So this developer is going to come and build 900 to 1,200 apartments and bring in more families, which I'm not against, but you're going to bring them in and they're not going to pay the same share of taxes that we are. And now
your business might be paying more taxes than they are.
And we said this last year before, in the last campaign, that they were going to, fill it up and they were going to end up needing a new high school. And now, literally 2 days ago, the superintendent came out and said, we need a new high school. And, it's going to be at the sum probably of around $400 million. And, we talk about that. And so now we get people coming into the town that aren't paying into the tax bracket, but they're going to get a new high school. Who do you think's paying the $400 million high school?
Exactly.
It don't take a genius to understand that.
Right.
So
redevelopment, the tax dollars of the people that were probably against the payment in lieu of taxes.
Right. So I'm not against redevelopment. I think there's things our town does need. There's areas that have been neglected that I think are eyesores and they should be fixed. But, I feel like their approach is very again, as a salesman, I was a salesman for a long time. I feel like the township's approach is very weak, right? They let these developers kind of roll on them and tell them what they want. And they said, well, we had to do a pilot program because nobody wanted to develop here. Really? A township with 50,000 residents on a major highway that goes all the way from North Jersey to the shore? You need to give people incentives to want to build on a highway that sees 50 to 100,000 cars a day?
The problem is nobody turns down free stuff from the government.
Right, but it's not even the government here. These are private developers.
Well, no, what I'm saying is if the council got on board and said, okay, we're going to give you payment in lieu of taxes, and we're not going to charge you taxes and let you build there without paying taxes, they're going to take it. The builders are going to take it.
I'm not saying anything. Look, I get it, but if I was the mayor, and I tell you what, if the guy in my town doesn't watch his back, I might run against him in 2 years.
Okay.
But who knows?
I
But
love it. I love it. I love it.
I would turn around to this developer and I'd say, hey, I'm the new guy on the block. Your deal's off the table now, unless you're willing to come and negotiate. Because I think you're taking advantage of our residents. I think you're taking advantage of the taxpayer, and you're taking advantage of us. And
now that's a real hard stance that they could use against you, but no, I get it. I get it. You're standing up for the people because the people put you there instead of businesses that are taking.
You know what though, and I said this to the council, not to cut you off, but I said this to the council. The way that these elected officials spend money. You ever been to a casino, Will?
Yeah, well, yeah. Not regularly, but
so
yeah.
You know how it is, right? When you first get there, like me, I only take $200 because I'm an addict, right? So I can't go more than $200. But I like blackjack. I don't know about you, but I go blackjack and I try to find the lowest table. $15, $20 hands. Build my chips, right? Yeah. And I'll take my $20 hands, and you win a couple, and then before you know it, now you've got a nice little pile of chips in front of you, and now those $15, $20 bets are $50 bets, $100 bets, and the reality is these local officials and the federal officials gamble big because it's easy to gamble big when you're playing with house money. And these officials are playing with our money, not theirs.
That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it.
This isn't their pocket change. This is our pocket. These are our life savings. These are our 401ks. These are our property taxes that they're playing.
Now, so what I was going to go into a minute ago, even though they get these big developers could get mad at you for saying that, about deals off the table. The reality is, it sounds to me also like you're somebody that would be willing to come to the table to find something that fits you all better or fits your community better and is better for the community overall. That doesn't give away the store, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's what needs to happen is people do need that. And we have to. Now, I'm on my way to the Republican council meeting, so don't mind the move. This is my kitchen back here. They're not really
I love it.
Working too hard. But we're gonna be taking you on the road here. But, we need to have more of that. And I really do believe that there needs to be more conversations like that. And it's not happening right now. But when I raised the question, and I even said that exact same phrase that I just said to you about, it's easy. Big.
Wait, Dave, you're breaking up a little bit there. Dave's not there. Dave.
So
there you are.
You still with me? You still with me?
We lost you for just a couple minutes there. You scrambled.
Am I back?
Well, it's scrambling the screen for so. Oh, there you are. There you go. Okay, there you go.
Hey. Yeah, I have. So now I guess I'm on my way to the Republican committee because I guess, are voting on the candidates. And being that I'm one of the candidates, it's probably beneficial that I show my face.
Absolutely. Well, I won't keep you too much longer. Then
no, I got wrapped up in our conversation. I looked at the clock. I said, "Oh boy." And then, of course, the chair goes, "Hey, do me a favor and wear a suit tonight." Obviously, I'm not in a suit, so I have to, go home and get ready.
There you go. Well, let's talk. I like the fact, though, that, you're looking out for down to the community and their tax dollars, and you're being a good steward of their money. But it sounds to me like this is a question I asked a second ago. It sounds like you'd also be willing that if these developers had other ideas, you might entertain other ideas that helps bring business and develop business in, but at the same time doesn't rob from the people's tax dollars.
Right. Well, the big issue that I had was, because again, like I told you, I went and I spoke to almost every resident in my town. So I went and spoke to these business owners, and these business owners wanted to be a part of this redevelopment. They wanted to be included in the plans for the town, and the township didn't want to include them. And I said, what kind of redevelopment would you ever put on the table that would displace people that have been business owners in our town for the last 10, 15, 20 years? So I would love the developer to come back to the table, and I would love to have a conversation that would include these business owners and these property. Right.
I love that. Hey, let's talk about taxes. You got taxes on your website.
Well, obviously
nobody likes taxes, but speaking of taxes.
Well, you know what? Then that just really comes down to the fiscal responsibility of things. Obviously, property taxes and federal taxes. That's not really something that we have control over. But about 20% of your taxes goes to the municipality level, right? So
Right.
it would come down to, all right, well, if and we pay. New Jersey is it's in the top 5 for highest taxed states. So we look at there's tons and tons of money. Now, obviously, I know you're talking about funding roads and infrastructure and things like that, but that goes back to the whole statement about fiscal responsibility. Now, when I see things like last year during the pandemic, they voted $80,000 to fix a dugout at one of the baseball fields, and I raised the question. I said, "You're spending $80,000 to fix a baseball field, but then you turn around and kids aren't even allowed to go outside and play baseball." So,
hey,
so
Captain
again,
Obvious.
the questions are being raised of, it's just really about, I really just want to manage the budget. And I asked people, I said, when's the last time your local town gave you a tax surplus? When's the last time you got a rebate check?
Right. In the Louisiana legislature right now, they've got a state rep that has a bill to give the people back some of the money because they're going to run a surplus, so they're going to give some of the money back. But also to your point is, I've done a lot of interviews with the assessors in Louisiana, and and what happens is, the local library says, hey, we need a little bit more millage money, to be able to fund our library for the children, and then they get this extra millage, and then they never adjust it. So before you know it, the public library has a $5 million surplus.
I agree. Look, our libraries are great. But let's be fair. How many kids, I'm not saying people aren't using them. So again, if they're going to try to cut and screw this and say, oh, Dave Herrera says he's anti-library. Like, I'm not anti-library whatsoever. But how many people are going to the library? Government.
You're pro good government. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's just, and we look at it.
Well, and a lot of people, like I said, when they look at how much surplus some of the libraries have, or some of these other institutions have, or parts of government have, because of the millage rates, and they don't roll it back. Now people are becoming more aware that, hey, we can actually ask our assessors of those independent taxing districts and libraries to not collect the money if they've got a surplus. So more and more people are becoming aware, that our tax dollars are not necessarily that we always have to just willy-nilly pay them. We can ask our elected officials to be more responsible, fiscally responsible with our money.
Right.
So citizens can be more proactive. That's the part we're trying to say is citizens can be more proactive in our tax dollars and how they're spent and how they're collected. And when we get good council members on there, now you've got somebody who also believes that can make that connection between government and people. Is that something you feel you're going to do real well?
Right. Again, I believe that's exactly the reason why I stepped up. I believe that's exactly the reason why I'm running, is because I'm not, this elite person. I truly, look, when I ran my campaign, the forefront of my campaign was talking about my recovery, was talking about my journey, was talking about my business, to show people that, I am like you. I am no better. I am just a citizen who, frankly, just got sick of the BS that's going on and said, I need to do something. And I've always been the most outspoken in a room. You saw me at CPAC the first day I was walking around. We picked up a camera crew from Germany and we were walking around.
I love it.
I've always been that person that will draw the attention of the room.
Right.
And, when I was young, they labeled me, the class clown. I was this, I was that. Now I want to take that attention and point it to issues that I believe I can help people. Right. And this kind of goes back to the recovery aspect of my life. I know so many people, it's an unfortunate statistic, that have passed away from opioid use, from drug overdoses. It's a very it's not a good statistic, but it's the reality that we live in. And I could have very easily had been one of those statistics. And I believe that my God, my higher power, whatever it is people want to refer to it as, has me here for a purpose. And I believe that with this time that I've been given, right, with this second chance on life that I've been given, why not use it to help people? Because there's a lot of people like me and you, Will, that feel this way, but there's not a lot of people that are willing to step up and go toe to toe with the machine. There's not a lot of people that will risk their livelihoods, right? How many people do you know that didn't want to get vaccinated but did it because they didn't want to lose their job?
Right. And that's a loss of freedom.
It's right now. It's not. Somebody told me there's no freedom in a public health emergency. So that's what I heard. But that's what we're talking about. But there's people who are afraid to fight. I'm here on your show, and I go to every single person that will ask me to speak, and I'll tell them the same thing. I have no fear. I fear no man. I fear God. I believe that I'm here for a reason. I believe that that my gift of gab that I've had since a kid that maybe got me in trouble in grade school is gonna help some people. It's gonna give people back their freedoms, and I think we can. Again, my focus is East Brunswick right now. But that's not where I want to end. I want to fix my town, and then I want to fix my county, and then I want to fix my state, and then I want to help fix America. So I'm young. I have energy. I've got. Obviously, I understand a lot of what's going on, and this is in such a short period of time. So I'm tapped in. I'm ready to go, and surrounding myself with other like-minded people and not like-minded people, because again, you can't become diverse. You can't have.
If you're always talking in that echo chamber, you never get new ideas.
That's what I put on the bottom of my campaign card. Right? There's a famous saying, and I put this on my card, and I said that. If two men in a room have the same idea, you only need one of them. Our council currently has 5 of them.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's a good thought.
Think about it. If me and you both think exactly the same,
right,
you only need to talk to one of us.
Right. Exactly.
We need diversity. As much as people may not like it, you're supposed to have somebody that doesn't agree with you, right? It's kind of like even like in relationships, my mom was always like, could you imagine if you were with someone that was like your level of energy? I'm like, no, that would be terrible.
Yeah.
Like, I need somebody to balance me, and we need that in our government as well.
Right. I love it. That's a great way to put it. Well, I got one more question. I'm going to ask you one more question before I state the obvious. But I love the fact that you want to be able to be a liaison between. Well, let me pose it as a question, because I think there's more answers there than my observation. Which is, do you think that you can be an effective liaison between Republicans, Democrats, government, and the people in the community?
Absolutely. Because I think it takes common sense, which unfortunately is not common these days.
Yeah.
But look, nothing against, anybody's belief system, but look, I'm an unapologetic Republican, right? I'm a conservative. I believe in certain things, but I've also lived in New Jersey and New York majority of my life. So a lot of my friends, a lot of my ideals do lean on the social side of the Democrat spectrum. So I believe that I will be able to sit there at that table and be that person that can say, what, instead of shouting across the aisle, why aren't we reaching across the aisle? At the end of the day, this contest, this machismo of, because look, what are we setting ourselves up for? Whether you like Trump or not is irrelevant. But when Joe Biden came into office, what did he do in the first week of his presidency? He undid everything that Trump had done. So now we're setting the precedence to when a Republican gets back in office, he's just going to go in there and undo everything Joe Biden did in the first week.
Right.
Because again, we're not actually listening to the people. We're listening to these party line, big wigs, and we're only doing what is best suited for one demographic. Now, listen, I think there's sides of the aisle that are both absolutely bonkers, and some of their ideas are like, I can't believe you said that out loud.
Right.
But we should still have those discussions in a calm and peaceful manner, and we should still be willing to hear both sides out. So I believe sitting at that table is exactly what I was designed for. Now, you can't see on my arm, I have a tattoo of Benjamin Franklin. And a lot of people go, of all the famous people, I know a lot of rappers get Benjamin Franklin tattooed on them because of money, but that's not why I did it. People ask why I got Benjamin Franklin. and he's wearing a Minuteman hat. People say, why you get Benjamin Franklin? I said, Benjamin Franklin was America's first diplomat, right? Benjamin Franklin was America's first diplomat. He was willing to see both sides and to be the negotiator. And when they asked Benjamin Franklin to run, he didn't want to run. He didn't want the power. He believed power corrupted people. He wanted to give power back to the people he was representing. So I really, I wouldn't say idolize because I never met the guy, but I really model a lot of what I believe after a guy like Ben Franklin, because not only was he an inventor, not only was he all these other things, apparently he was also a ladies' man too, but he was
Now, see that when I see the pictures of him, I go, well, if he can do it,
right? But he was America's first diplomat. He was the guy that sat there in that room when they were signing the Declaration, when they were, putting together all of that information that made our country what it was. He should be in that same conversation as the George Washingtons, the Thomas Jeffersons. He was up there. And but I believe that's what I'm here to do, is to be that liaison, to be that diplomat, to represent my party. Yeah, of course, because I do believe we need more Republican representation. But it's also about being able to, have that conversation with the Democrat Party and say, hey, guys, enough. Let's work for the people here.
So I've got an observation to make, and then I've got my final question, because you're probably almost home too, and I want to get you a chance to run out. And and Dave, we're gonna have more conversations. Now we have more conversations. What's that?
Anytime you want.
But maybe an interview after you get elected too, and we're gonna see each other at some of the next gatherings coming up. But first, my observation is something that I've noticed, and I really like that you said that you want to use your experience when you were an addict. You want to use that life experience, how you turned your life around, and that you believe that you are given a second chance. You believe that that moment that God put you here for a purpose, and that you want to use that life-changing event for you to help other people, especially help your community. And I just wanted to make that observation, or I guess highlight, that observation. Do you want to say anything about that real quick?
No.
Last question.
No, I appreciate the observation, and that's exactly what it is. And then again, not to get too deep into it, but there's a saying that we have in recovery, and it's that addicts suffer in silence. And I like to put it out there and talk about my road to recovery, because like when I told you earlier in the show, where I was 5 years ago, you're like, I never would have pictured it. Right. And had I never told you about my journey, you would have never drawn that conclusion.
Right.
But I want to be that I don't want to say it where it comes off like I'm, trying to put myself on a pedestal, because I'm not. But I want to be that face, that voice for somebody that maybe doesn't know that help is out there, or maybe thinks it's impossible, and say, hey, listen, I didn't make this point, but I said this along the campaign. 5 years ago, I was sleeping in my car in East Brunswick. 5 years later, I'm one of the most popular Republicans to ever run in town. So
I love it.
Recovery is possible. A new way to live is possible. And yeah, I think showing people that, I'm not just a guy in a suit. While I look really good in a suit, I'm just, it's part of the uniform, but yeah. I'm just an average American that wants to see other average Americans succeed in the American dream the way I believe that I'm able to do today.
So my last question for you, Dave, is, and it's a two-part question. I used to do it as two questions, but I combined it, is, what makes America the greatest country, and what unites us in America? What are the two things that, or the one thing rather, that unites us, and what makes us the greatest country in the world?
I mean, first and foremost, it has to be the fact that we are a country of freedoms. We are a country of liberty. And back to what I said, the hope of the American dream. Right now, I know for a while there was a lot of people who believed the American dream was dead. But again, like I just kind of hit on right before, I am living proof that the American dream is alive and well. My family immigrated from Cuba. My grandfather immigrated from St. Vincent. We all came here. They came here with nothing in their pockets. All they came here was with the the thought of having an opportunity to succeed in this nation here.
Exactly.
And, this is the greatest country because you go other places. Look, whether or not you agree with me, I'm sure there's somebody that will hop on this that's anti everything me and you will say, and they'll talk a whole bunch of garbage. But you know what? We live in a country, and you're allowed to say those things.
Absolutely.
You're allowed to say you don't like President Trump. You're allowed to say you don't like President Biden. And you know what? Secret Service won't show up at your house like they will in Russia or China. You know, this is a free country. And I love that. And what was the...
So, Dave, we lost you there for another second, but I'm gonna hang on for a minute. Dave. All right, we might have lost you, Dave.
I got you. I'm back.
There you are. There you are.
So that's the first part of why I think this is the greatest country, because, you know, you can come here, you can be anything you want to be, do anything you want to do, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And what I think unites us is something that I believe right now the media and there's organizations that are using to divide us. But what unites us is the fact that we are so different. You know, you can go anywhere in any country. Like I told you, my town specifically is so diverse. It's so filled with different people. And I think that's what that should bring us together, is that it doesn't matter where people started their journey. They ended up here in the land of opportunity, in the land of America, the United States, because they all knew. Didn't matter whether you were born in Japan or Ghana or France or Mexico or Canada, wherever. You came to America because you knew, you heard stories of this free, independent land. And I think that rather than focusing on the fact that we're different and using it as a divisive feature, we need to use that. Hey, I don't care your background, but you're here now. We're Americans. Let's build together. Because again, the fact that there's so much diversity, there's so much culture, that does truly make us an unstoppable country.
I love it. Well, Dave, I better let you get back to, because you're almost home probably, and I want to make
I gotta pull the Clark Kent and put this suit on real quick.
Exactly right. So man, I really enjoyed our conversation, Dave.
Absolutely.
I really have. And I'll email you the links. Actually, I'll share it on your Facebook page, and we'll ask everybody else to share the interview, share the podcast. Podcast can be found on William Wallace for America. And Dave, good luck tonight.
Thank you very much. And listen, anytime you want to talk, you know, hopefully I'll see you in Texas in a few months. But
you'll see me in Texas in a few months.
But you know, I appreciate the conversation, man, and you know, you having a platform like this to allow people like myself to speak out. You know, look, you have no sweat in the game here for me in East Brunswick, but I appreciate you giving me the platform. I just, when I met you, I think you're somebody that needs to have some good ideas put out there, needs your voice heard, and hopefully people in your district will listen to this podcast and watch the interview and learn more about you like we all did tonight. Thank you so much, man. You have a great night.
Thank you. Good. Have a good night.